Invincible Season 3 gave fans a few moments that they had been waiting to see in the show, and it really did not disappoint. Now, everyone who had been complaining about the animation being quote-unquote trash is eating their words, because wow was that conquest fight scene beautiful. There's plenty of examples of great animation in the show between Alan and Nolan in the Viltrumite prison or the Invincible War, but it's clear that the only bad animation in the show is due to dialogue scenes being less important than action scenes, which use up more of the budget. Maybe if Amazon actually funded their most popular show right now, we'd get great animation all the time. I'm just saying. Anyways, we all got to experience peak television, that much is clear, and I don't really need to say it. I do want to talk about what I found interesting about this season, which is how they deal with Mark's dilemma with taking that next step in ending villains' lives. It's something that was always interesting about heroes like Batman or Daredevil. They have a line that they just can't bring themselves to cross, a code that they need to not turn into what they fight against. But what happens when there is no other way to stop the villain but to cross that line? That's the question that I want to look at as I talk about Season 3 of... Before I get started, I wanted to say, hi! Thank you for checking out this channel. I'm going to be making reviews and discussions for movies and TV shows, so if you're interested in any of that, make sure to like and subscribe after the video if you enjoy it. Also, spoiler warning for this season of Invincible, I won't spoil every single detail, but I'll talk about a lot of major details. With that, you've been warned. This season starts us off with the conflict that we had seen the signs of in the previous season, which was Mark versus Cecil. There was obviously some tension, since shortly after Omni-Man destroyed half the Earth, Mark was really humanity's only hope. Earth's safety all depended on whether Mark would stand up for the people of Earth or join Nolan in conquering the planet. Cecil knew that risk, and at certain points it seems like he still might be on the fence about fully trusting Mark. Now to make things worse, the Global Defense Agency has D.A. Sinclair and Darkwing, who had previously been villains in the show, working for them to assist the heroes, which Invincible is not okay with. Mark sees this as objectively wrong, and he confronts Cecil for keeping this a secret, to which, I'll be frank, Cecil wholly overreacts and spawns in his army of Reanimen to keep Invincible back. Then, after Mark threatens him, Cecil decides to hit maybe the hardest pose of the show and fry this man's brain until he has to run to the Guardians for help. Geez, I wonder why Invincible doesn't trust Cecil this season. This all leads to a fight between Cecil, Mark, the Reanimen, and the Guardians that ends with Mark chokeslamming Cecil and vowing to never work for him. Now, it's completely understandable that Mark doesn't want to work with Cecil after he almost took Mark out permanently, but the issue with this is the argument that started the whole fight in the first place. I get that Mark is feeling betrayed because he didn't know that Cecil had recruited reformed supervillains to work for him. But the key word here is reformed. For Mark, this issue is cut and dry. If you're a villain, you don't deserve a second chance. You need to be locked away so that you can never commit the same crimes again. But after Omni-Man committed arguably the worst crimes of anyone in the show so far, eliminating the Guardians, destroying the city, taking thousands of innocent lives, and almost taking over the Earth, you'd think he would be a little more understanding of the criminals that were rehabilitated by a government agency that is known to put chips in people and constantly monitor them. What are they even going to do when Cecil has eyes in the sky watching these guys 24/7? Not to mention they work directly under him, and he has access to most superheroes out there, so there's no risk factor of them going rogue. Cecil's perspective is that you don't need to use morally correct methods as long as you reach the determined best goal. We get to see a lot of Cecil when he starts out with the GDA. We see him actually try his best to be a hero the way Mark's trying to be, to do what's right. But down the line he realizes that not everything is that cut and dry, and sometimes you have to think about not what is good, but what will benefit the broader objective. Except for the end of the season, which I'll get to later, but Cecil seriously pissed the bed with his decision making. Come on, man. That's why I don't have hair on the top of your head. He understands Mark's perspective. Mark is a young hero. Of course he's going to want to save every person, take down every criminal, and make sure that people don't live in fear. But what he fails to see is that he's all about people taking accountability up until it's his own family that has to take accountability. Like Oliver literally 2 episodes later when he demolishes the Mauler twins like they're nothing, and Invincible is there to swoop in and defend him immediately after. If Oliver was some random villain, Mark would take him to Cecil to have him locked up right away. But in this case, Cecil ended up being the one who actually understood that Oliver is just a kid trying to help. He's a being from another planet who isn't used to being empathetic, so he deserves that second chance, which Cecil can see. In the end, I think that Cecil is right in that Mark needs to stop seeing the world in just either black or white, right or wrong, good or evil. Not every problem is that simple. Sometimes the line between good and evil isn't as clear as you think. Sometimes you end up having to do things you wouldn't have in the interest of the greater good. Sometimes that means forgiving the unforgivable to make way for growth in order to move on and become stronger. I think at the beginning of this season, Mark deep down knows that that's true, seeing as he's given his dad more leeway. But he hasn't fully come around to seeing the villain's perspectives until the second half of the season, when he runs into Powerplex. As much as Invincible has been trying to move past the guilt of smashing Angstrom's skull in, no one this season is letting him have a moment of peace. He's on a date, he gets taken to the future. He's trying to help people, some Electro wannabe is out for blood. And then after everything at the start of the season, a bunch of variants of Invincible wreak havoc. There is no moment of silence for Mark this season, and it really adds on to him being more miserable. He deals with having to go to the future to save Earth from Immortal's reign, which has been full of death and dictatorship, and he's far too strong for anyone to stop him besides Invincible. He does the typical talk with the villain to try and reason with them, but the Immortal has simply been alive for far too long at this point, and he's had too much responsibility placed upon him, and it's driven him mad. The Immortal is angry at past Invincible, thinking he's the Invincible of his time that's trapped him with this position, and realizing that he's clearly gone too far, he asks Invincible to put him out of his misery, as it's the only way he'll be able to stop. Now obviously Invincible tries his absolute best to resist having to do that, but Immortal really leaves him no choice after he threatens Dropkick and Fightmaster's lives, so Mark ends the Immortal for good. Even with Dropkick and Fightmaster praising Mark for saving their timeline, the guilt is too much for Mark to even feel any sense of justice or pride anymore. Taking people out isn't something that he ever wanted to do, but it seems like the world isn't giving him a choice. He can't seem to control himself, then he seems to be made to do what he feels is wrong. Even when he's doing someone a service, even when he's saving an entire planet, by taking that step, crossing his moral line is a heavy burden on Mark, one that he doesn't take lightly and he constantly faces this season, regardless of if he purposely crossed that line or not. Powerplex's whole beef with Invincible was over something he couldn't have possibly controlled. I mean, you can't exactly blame Mark for being pushed through an entire subway train full of people. I think it's pretty clear to see, for everyone except Powerplex apparently, that Mark was trying his best to defend Earth from Omni-Man's horrific attack. But even in the instances where he tried his hardest to stop lives from being taken, there's still immense pressure put on him. Powerplex blames Invincible for the death of his sister and niece, who he tried to save by the way, but it's because he tried and failed to save them that he feels the guilt that Powerplex is putting onto Invincible. That is what opposes Mark so heavily to lethal measures, because you don't know who will be affected by that measure and what burden it puts on the person who took that measure. He can't go back and save Powerplex's family, and Powerplex electrocutes his wife and son all on his own, and yet all the blame is placed onto Invincible by Powerplex. And yes, it is because he's kind of dumb, but that's neither here nor there. And even after all this, he keeps having guilt be put on him after the events of the Invincible War. I mean, to anyone it would seem pretty clear that without Invincible, none of this would have happened. It is literally Invincible causing all of this destruction after all, even if it isn't Mark himself. Thousands of lives gone, cities leveled, and loved ones hurt because of his variance, and this only adds to the tremendous weight that's been on him these past few episodes. I swear the Invincible writers have to be the same people writing Spider-Man comics, because Mark cannot catch a break at all in Season 3. Mark seems to be out of options. He doesn't want to cross that line and stop the destruction but see himself as irredeemable. But because he isn't taking those measures, there's chaos all around him. He doesn't want to be seen as someone ruthless. He doesn't want to end up becoming like all those Invincible variants who go around leveling cities just to get what he wants. But soon he would face an opponent who would leave him no choice but to do the unthinkable. Now, before we get into talking about Conquest, I have to say this fight was incredible. It's what every comic reader and hardcore fan had been waiting for, and they absolutely delivered on this episode. The animation budget all went to this episode, and it was very deserved. They're blasting through the air, causing huge blasts and causing mass destruction, which I'm guessing doesn't really help Mark's case in Powerplex's eyes. But this episode was unforgiving and impactful. Easily the best of the last two seasons, maybe the show, but the first season was just so tightly written that I can't say that outright. But what's not up for debate is that Conquest is the absolute highlight of this season. What makes the final episode amazing is just how ruthless, sadistic, and unforgiving Conquest is.
I'm not here to spread the greatness of the Viltrum Empire. I'm here because I enjoy this.
Like he says himself, he's not here for the Viltrum Empire or to even conquer Earth, really, but because he wants as much carnage as he can possibly cause. And the scariest part is how much fun he's having about all this pain that he's causing. All of this is a game to him, a new playground, and a new toy for him to play with. I love how much Jeffrey Dean Morgan had fun with the role, and it comes through to make Conquest such a sick villain who is as goofy as he is horrific. I mean, look at him! He hits an emote mid-fight. That's insane. He wants to enjoy every second of torture that he deals onto Mark and everyone else who gets in his way. This isn't some villain that wants revenge or money or power. He just wants pain for Invincible and everyone else. He's a force that Mark couldn't have possibly anticipated, even with all his intense training and experience with the Viltrumites. He's a Viltrumite so fearsome that no one else even wants to interact with him, let alone spend more than 5 minutes near him. He's only been delegated a purpose: to conquer and destroy whatever is in his path. What do you even do when a villain makes it so clear that he has no motive, no loved ones, no goal other than to hurt? This whole season, Mark has gone from condemning criminals, to giving people second chances, to now being faced with someone so unforgivable, someone who is prepared to turn the planet into a speck, and Invincible is humanity's only hope against him. As soon as he arrives, Conquest makes sure that he's making Invincible's life torture. He hurts Oliver, snaps Mark's leg, and incapacitates Eve, and there seems to be nothing that will get him to stop. Not a plea, not a shout, nothing. Mark can't take Conquest down plain and simply. He can't put him away to rot in jail. There's only one way that he can stop Conquest, and as the massacre goes on, Mark begins to realize that he's going to have to put aside his moral dilemma and just end him. Just as Conquest gives Invincible an all-new traumatizing experience on the beach full of people, Eve steps in to help Mark, but she's outmatched in pure strength by Conquest, who not only breaks her face, but punches a hole through her stomach. This is Mark's breaking point. Mark is now at his wit's end, believing that he lost his girlfriend, the person who understood all the struggles that he goes through as a hero, and it's because of this heartless monster who's laughing, monologuing to this guy like he's doing his favorite hobby, and Invincible is fuming. He knows that if he doesn't put a stop to Conquest, he will not only lose everyone he loves, but that everyone on Earth will be at Conquest's mercy. He spent the entire season not wanting to have to resort to crossing this line over and over and over. That he doesn't become something darker. That he isn't like the criminals that he's had to put away. But now he has no other choice. He needs to stop the destruction. He wants to make sure that Conquest doesn't live to see tomorrow.
See the future. You don't live to see tomorrow.
Literal chills. This part is so good. He goes beyond his limits, breaks his robotic arm with his bone, like he fully demolishes his own arm to break Conquest's gauntlet, and keeps fighting Conquest with his remaining limbs, but even that is not enough to take him down. He can't defeat him after all. Invincible is going to die. Conquest has his hands around his neck, and this man starts to talk about how lonely he is.
All the other Viltrumites are scared of me.
Like what? Excuse me? I swear they couldn't have made Conquest any stranger, and it's really just perfect. He just fully lets out his innermost thoughts to Mark because he is fully ready to end him, and he needed to let it out. It's the one moment where we get to see behind the mask of the monster, but he is still truly so twisted. As Invincible is about to reunite with Rex, rest in paradise, he was the best guardian, trade him for Immortal and Kate, please. Eve begins resurrecting, and she comes back even stronger than before to pulverize Conquest from the outside with an energy beam. This gives Invincible the opening he needs to pin Conquest down and bash his head in again and again, asking if this is what he wanted, but Conquest clearly is still enjoying himself. With that, Mark doesn't hold back anymore, and he finally ends Conquest for good. Now Invincible is at the point that he didn't want to get to. He crossed over his line, and he went against his moral code. He got to the point where he decided that there are certain villains that can be stopped no other way than to be permanently eradicated, no longer being able to cause pain to others. He proved it to himself after Angstrom came back and caused the whole Invincible War in the first place, and now he won't be making the same mistake again. He took down the greatest threat to the planet because it was the only way he could have stopped him. He didn't have a choice. He now understands that there are times when there is no other solution, no way to be a pacifist, but instead you have to make the difficult choice to ensure the greater good. That's what being a hero is in the world of Invincible. Doing what it takes to save the day, regardless of if you're truly the good guy or not. A hero has to be willing to make the hard choices for the greater good. Except that this bald-headed buffoon keeps Conquest, the guy who did this, and this, and this, alive for questioning. That has got to be the worst decision of the show so far, and I know it's just so we can see him again, which I'm definitely not against. Overall, this season handled its characters and their dilemmas really well. We were able to see Mark's point of view, while also seeing that Cecil wasn't trying to be sneaky or anything. He just sees things in a different way. and even when the Guardians are split up about who to side with, each character stays consistent with how they've been portrayed before, so I thought that was done really well. Sure, there were things like Rex's funeral being a bit rushed, and Rudy stealing Rex's name because I guess his DNA wasn't enough, but I think this season was a great addition to the series. I honestly am going to be a bit sad not getting to see new episodes weekly, but I'll manage until the next season. I would much rather wait longer for better quality than get the dreaded sliding PNGs for when Thrag shows up. I need that fight to be peak. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like it. It really would mean a lot, and I would appreciate you for doing so. I'll be uploading more videos like this, so let me know anything that I should change about the videos, or maybe add in, improve, anything like that. But with that out of the way, I'll catch you next time.